Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you aren't. I'm EDJ, and we are continuing with Epic History's telling of World War One. So now we're covering the next year of 1915, and if I'm recalling some key events off the bat, this is where I know Italy joins the Allies. The Armenian, I believe this is where the Armenian genocide takes place as well, which is you know, as bad as any genocide is. And well, America doesn't join until 1917, but there were tensions because, you know, if I'm remembering correctly, again, I'm going off like knowledge from like high school. This is a bit far away that I'm recalling, but you know, the UK did try to basically blockade Germany, and Germany essentially did try to do the same thing back, and would often like, you know, destroy ships of any kind trying to traveling to Britain or back, and oftentimes Americans would die. And this is where kind of tension starts building, why you see America, you know, start to really be like, hey, Germany, not cool. You know, obviously this goes on for a few years because like I said, it's in 1917 where it's the official where America has joined, you know. But yeah, tension was building, you know, and yeah. So yeah, that those are some of the things that popped in my head right now. Obviously, a lot more happened because a lot happens in a single war. A lot happens in just one year of a war of this magnitude. So I don't really have much else to add other than we ought to get right into it. Let's watch World War One, 1915 by the great Epic History.
January 1915. World War I is just 5 months old, and already around 1 million soldiers have fallen. A war that began in the Balkans has engulfed much of the world. The Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, fight the Allies, Britain, France, Russia, Serbia and Montenegro, Belgium, and Japan. In Poland and the Baltic, the Russian army has suffered a string of massive defeats, but continues to battle German and Austro-Hungarian forces. Austro-Hungarian troops have also suffered huge losses and are humiliated by their failure to defeat Serbia.
Which goes to show you, right? Like Serbia, at least if you look at the size of the other nations, and you know, it almost, you could look at Austria and be like, how haven't they just completely steamrolled? But like, yeah, the Serbian resistance is just amazing. I remember learning about this and how they were able to just hang in there with Austria, you know? And I do joke, like, yeah, in World War II, you know, like, Germany kind of carried its allies. Yeah, you know, but, yeah, let's keep watching.
In the Caucasus Mountains, Russian and Ottoman forces fight each other in freezing winter conditions. While on the Western Front, French, British and Belgian troops are dug in facing the Germans, in trenches stretching from the English Channel to Switzerland. As part of the world's first strategic bombing campaign, Germany sends 2 giant airships known as Zeppelins to bomb Britain. They hit the ports of King's Lynn and Great Yarmouth, damaging houses and killing 4 civilians.
Yeah, funny thing is, I was kind of like reading up on like World War II and some of the bombings that took place, you know, and there are many just a lot of images. I think the one that stands out to me the most is the milkman, you know, continuing to go about his day while there's just everything is destroyed around him, which I think is just very telling of, like, you know, the resolve of the English and just like how, yeah, we can do this, you know, you're not gonna scare us because they're just bombing, you know, we'll go about our business, you know, which is just something to just I admire personally. Like, that's just like, how much more baller could you be, right?
At sea, at the Battle of Dogger Bank, the British Navy sinks one German cruiser, but the rest of the German squadron escapes. Command of the seas has allowed Britain to impose a naval blockade of Germany, preventing vital supplies, including food, from reaching the country by sea. Germany now retaliates with its own blockade. It declares the waters around the British Isles to be a war zone, where its U-boats will attack Allied merchant ships without warning. Britain relies on imported food to feed its population. Germany plans to starve her into surrender. On the Eastern Front, German Field Marshal von Hindenburg launches a winter offensive and inflicts another massive defeat on the Russian army at the Second Battle of Masurian Lakes. The Russians lose up to 200,000 men, half of them surrendering amid freezing winter conditions. The Russians have more success against Austria-Hungary. The city of Przemysl falls after a 4-month siege, netting the Russians 100,000 prisoners. Austria-Hungary's total losses now reach 2 million. Meanwhile, the British and French send warships to the Dardanelles to threaten Constantinople, capital of the Turkish Ottoman Empire. They believe a show of force will quickly cause Turkey to surrender. They bombard Turkish shore forts in the narrow straits, but 3 battleships are sunk by mines and 3 more damaged. The attack is called off. On the Western Front, the British attack at Neuve-Chapelle, but the advance is soon halted by German barbed wire and machine guns. British and Indian units suffer 11,000 casualties, about a quarter of the attacking force. 6 weeks later, at the Second Battle of Ypres, the Germans attack with poison gas for the first time on the Western Front.
Yeah, chemical warfare is something I remember we did learn about, you know, like, yeah, even up to, like, my college years, like, you know, back in, like, 2019, 2020, pre-pandemic, I was taking an English class, and we did cover a bit of World War One, and mainly the, you know, like, writing, the writers who emerged, etc. I'm an English major, but, you know, and there is the idea of the mustard gas, right? And the effects it would have, and yeah, overall chemical warfare that was rising and just a frightening thing, you know. I don't believe it had that many killed in comparison to other weapons, but obviously it could leave some pretty bad effects, and I'm pretty sure blindness is one of them. Like I said, it's been a while since I've looked up all the effects of what happened, but obviously no soldier wants to be caught into that, right? And there are images of gas masks, you know, kind of, you'll see soldiers wearing gas masks and trying to deal with this, you know, the chemical warfare being brought in. It's just like I said, just so much happened in one war. Like we you know, everyone's showing off the coolest new form of technology, right? The airplanes, the zeppelins, the gas, just everyone's bringing out, you know, all the new toys, right, for war, and at the same time showing us, oh snap, like things have changed dramatically. Like war has already deadly enough has risen to a new height, you know? And just and in World War II, when the atom bomb gets introduced, it's just like, oh snap, you know, like we've gotten really dangerous, you know. Oh man, I'm waiting for the tank to show up because, like, you know, the tank makes its debut in World War One, and you know, I was kind of like trying to look up like excerpts from like the reactions of soldiers who first saw the tank, and I don't know. We'll get there when we get there, obviously, but yeah, just like so much, man, happened.
A cloud of lethal chlorine forces Allied troops to abandon their trenches. But the Germans don't have enough reserves ready to exploit the advantage. Soldiers on both sides are quickly supplied with crude gas masks as a chemical weapons arms race begins. The Allies land ground troops at Gallipoli, including men of the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, the Anzacs. Their goal is to take out the shore forts that are preventing Allied warships reaching Constantinople. But they immediately meet fierce Turkish resistance and are pinned down close to the shore. The day before the landings, the Ottoman Empire begins the systematic deportation and murder of ethnic Armenians living within its borders. The Armenians are a long-persecuted ethnic and religious minority, suspected of supporting Turkey's enemies. Tens of thousands of men, women and children are transported to the Syrian desert and left to die. In all, more than 1 million Armenians perish. The Allies condemn—
Yes, the Armenian genocide, you know, is something we learned, man, I'm trying to remember just when I first heard about it, long time ago, but obviously it's just an awful event. And you know, the whole genocide of just a group of people, you know, whether it be just because of ethnicity or just because they believe in something, you know, for instance, I believe in Jesus, you know, some people take offense to that just cause, and you know, whatever, but, you know, it's like, you know, just, like, picking on a group of people just cause is just, I don't know, it's just awful. Like, I think of, like, Hitler's absolute, you know, atrocities he committed against the Jewish people, just cause they're Jewish, just cause he doesn't like them, just cause he's racist, just, like, at the end of the day, we're all people at the end, you know, none of us are perfect, and, you know, I just think it's just dumb. Like, I'm very fortunate, you know, where I'm from, here in California, I've been raised around a lot of different, you know, groups, and, you know, for instance, there's a lot of Asians where I'm from, a lot of Hispanics, such as myself. You know, there are black people, white people. At the end of the day, it's just, we're all people. I never, like, obviously, you know, I see there's, you know, we all have our ups and downs. Some of us are nicer than others. But, you know, at the end, we're just people. And, you know, just to target a group of people for whatever reason is just, like, just awful. Like, like I said, I'm fortunate. Like, I'm not racist. I just see us, we're all people, and I'm fortunate. But there are people out there who will look down on certain groups just cause, you know, they look different, just cause they have different practices, or, you know, and it's just, to me, it's just stupid. Like, I don't know. I think Hitler's a pathetic person. Like, I've never been, like, full-on antagonistic towards anyone in all these series, you know, we've covered, but, like, people like Hitler and whatnot are just sad people, like, pathetic, you know? And I just don't know how you could sleep well with yourself sending people, like, children and women and, you know, elderly people just to go die. Like, I don't know how a person just, like, just feels fine, doesn't care, could even, like, feel pride, and, like, you know, like, just, I don't know how you live with yourself. There are some, like, people like that worry me, you know, like who could just like be indifferent or happy at the death of others. Like, it's just awful. And you know, these images, like I've complimented Epic History for showing images like these, because they're not easy to look at, but they are important, because we can't filter, we can't sugarcoat history. I love humanity. I'm team humanity. I want humanity to keep going on. There are some people I've met who are very anti-humanity, and yeah, I met some real colorful characters in my life, but you know, I want us to always go on. You know, I love humanity, but that doesn't mean we're perfect. In fact, we've done a lot of awful things. We've had people like Hitler rise, you know, obviously there are awful people in the world, and like, you know, it's like just the idea like those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, and we need to learn this. Like, it is important. You know, this is just super important, and yeah, just to prevent stuff like this from happening, man, it's just awful, you know? And there have been plenty of awful things that have happened after World War One, you know? I don't know. I just don't know how people could, like, be content or, like, do this to other people. You know, it's just awful, man.
Condemn the events as a crime against humanity and civilization, and promise to hold the perpetrators criminally responsible. To this day, the Turkish government disputes the death toll, and that these events constituted a genocide.
And it's the fact that you're making that argument that, no, we didn't do that, that's just like no accountability, right? Like, how could you not just say, hey, you know what? Yeah, that was an awful thing that we did, you know? Yes, I don't know how people can just be content with themselves, like, doing something like that, or the higher ups for ordering something like that. Like, yeah, there are good people, but there are also monsters among humanity who have done awful things, you know?
On the Eastern Front, a joint German-Austro-Hungarian offensive in Galicia breaks through Russian defences, recapturing Przemysl and taking 100,000 prisoners. It is the beginning of a steady advance against Russian forces.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, a lot was going on with Russia at the time. You know, obviously the Tsar was soon to be overthrown, as Russia goes through a complete governmental change, in which eventually the communists under Lenin and, you know, probably the most famous communist leader, at least over here, Stalin, you know, go on. And yeah, there was a lot going on. I think there was a point after the overthrow of the Tsar where the new makeshift, you know, Russian government is like, okay, we kind of want out of the war, but the Germans are still going. So I think there was a point, I think even if I remember correctly, Oversimplified covering this in his Russian Revolution videos, that they came up with the idea of like, okay, maybe we can't make peace or end the war, but we'll just choose not to fight them. And then that just allowed the Germans to go even further or something like that. Like, if I remember correctly, that's the way Oversimplified explained it, was just this is a funny little memory that popped in my head again.
The British passenger liner Lusitania, sailing from New York to Liverpool, is torpedoed by a German U-boat off the coast of Ireland without warning. 1,198 passengers and crew perish, including 128 Americans. US President Woodrow Wilson and the American public are outraged. But Germany insists the liner was a fair target, as the British used her to carry military supplies. In May, the Allies launched the Second Battle of Artois in another effort to break through the German lines. The French make the main attack at Vimy Ridge, while the British launch supporting attacks at Aubert Ridge and Festubert. The Allies sustain 130,000 casualties and advance just a few thousand yards.
Yeah, that's the thing about trench warfare. Like, I remember learning about, sometimes they would have these great battles and so much death only to move not that much, you know? And it's like, oh, just the trench warfare is so awful. It's like one of the aspects of World War I that gets, you know, a lot of coverage, because just like life in the trench, living there, just sometimes sacrificing so much just to move a little, it's just awful, man. You know, like my heart goes out to all these brave soldiers who put up with those awful conditions, especially the living conditions. Like, living in the trench was no like nice place to be. And I think like often, like, I remember there was one excerpt I remember reading, I forgot from where, that, you know, sometimes like they would just drown in like mud or something, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just an awful thing that they all had to go through.
That summer, above the Western Front, the Fokker Eindecker helps Germany win control of the air. It's one of the first aircraft with a machine gun able to fire forward through its propeller, thanks to a new invention known as interrupter gear. Allied aircraft losses mount rapidly in what becomes known as the Fokker Scourge.
And it is interesting to see how much of these new, like, warfare ideas Germany itself is introducing, right? Like, yeah. And yeah, like, just how warfare has taken to even the skies now. Just everyone's fighting everywhere, land, sea, air. It's all over the place, man. Like, I could only imagine living at the time and witnessing all this. Like, so many new things happening that it's like, oh, like, this isn't how we learned about war. And then all this new technology, and, you know, the surprise and shock, and then afterwards the trying to copy and emulate it, and it becomes an arms race from then, right? Because, yeah, you see someone use technology like that, it's like, well, now we gotta find a way to replicate that and have our own, and then it just keeps going and going, and that's really is kind of war in a nutshell, right? Just the arms race. Like, you know, one group will introduce something, and then usually if it works well enough, other groups will start using it, and then it just keeps going until the next, you know, new bit of weaponry or tactics or whatever makes the scene, and then, yeah.
Can the government pass a law that makes someone good? We've forgotten the answer, no.
Yeah, at the time of this recording, there is elections going on. Well, you know, obviously, President Joe Biden has announced he's not gonna be running for president, so Kamala Harris is going for it. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking about modern politics. I broke my one rule that I don't want to talk about modern politics. It's just, I don't know why I felt the need to tell everyone this. Alright, let's go.
Italy, swayed by British and French promises of territorial gains at Austria-Hungary's expense, joins the Allies, declaring war on Austria-Hungary and later the Ottoman Empire and Germany. The Italian army makes its first assault against Austro-Hungarian positions along the Isonzo River, but is repulsed with heavy losses. Meanwhile, the Allies face a crisis on the Eastern Front. The Russians have begun a general retreat, abandoning Poland. German troops enter Warsaw on the 5th of August. Tsar Nicholas II dismisses the Russian army's commander-in-chief, Grand Duke Nicholas, and takes personal command. It will prove...
Like I mentioned last video, I believe, that I kind of felt bad for Tsar Nicholas, you know, mainly because obviously he understood that he wasn't fit to rule, but he did try to, and I do feel bad about his end, you know, getting murdered alongside his entire family. Like, that's an awful way to go. Though that doesn't, I don't mean to excuse all the people who died under his rule, because at the end, he wanted absolute power. He didn't try to, I guess, make the constitutional, you know, changes in monarchy and whatnot that, like, other places like the UK, for instance, did. You know, and the thing is, when you have all the power, you get all the blame, right? And obviously, he did rule incompetently. He wasn't a great ruler, and many died under him, you know? So obviously, on one hand, I feel really bad. On the other, it doesn't excuse his poor, you know, his mistakes and those who suffered under him. And I guess that goes for every monarch / leader, like, you know, yeah.
Disastrous for the Tsar, as he becomes more and more closely tied to Russian military defeat. At Gallipoli, the Allies land reinforcements at Suvla Bay, but neither they nor a series of fresh attacks by the Anzacs can break the deadlock. Conditions for both sides are terrible. Troops are tormented not only by the enemy, but by heat, flies, and sickness. In the Atlantic, a German U-boat sinks the liner SS Arabic. 44 are lost, including 3 Americans. In response to further US warnings, Germany ends all attacks on passenger ships. On the Western Front, the Allies mount their biggest offensive of the war so far, designed to smash through the front and take pressure off their beleaguered Russian ally. The French attack in the 3rd Battle of Artois and 2nd Battle of Champagne. The British, with the help of poison gas, attack at Loos. Despite initial gains, the attacks soon get bogged down, with enormous losses on all sides. Allied troops land at Salonika in Greece to open a new front against the Central Powers and bring aid to Serbia. But the Allies are too late. Bulgaria joins the Central Powers, and their joint offensive overruns Serbia in 2 months. That winter, the remnants of the Serbian army escape through the Albanian mountains. Their losses are horrific. By the end of the war, 1/3 of Serbia's army has been killed, the highest proportion of any nation. Fierce fighting continues on the Italian front, as Italian troops launch the 3rd and 4th battles of the Isonzo. Austro-Hungarian forces, though outnumbered, are dug in on the high ground and impossible to dislodge. In the Middle East, a British advance on Baghdad is blocked by Turkish forces at the Battle of Ctesiphon, 25 miles south of the city. The British withdraw to Kut, where they are besieged. The Allies abandon the Gallipoli campaign. 83,000 troops are secretly evacuated without alerting Turkish forces. Not a man is lost. It's one of the best executed plans of the war. The campaign has cost both sides 250,000 casualties. 1915 is a bad year for the Allies. Enormous losses for no tangible gains. But there is no talk of peace. Instead, all sides prepare for even bigger offensives in 1916, with new tactics developed from earlier failures. All sides still believe a decisive battlefield victory is within grasp. Epic History
So
TV.
another brilliant video by Epic History. And yeah, now he just goes by he removed the TV. But so yeah, overall another great video. And I love learning about this war, man. Like, this is so interesting to me. Like I said, I like this more than I like learning about World War One at the moment. If you want to hear more of my thoughts, you can watch part 1, where I spend the first 10 minutes of the video just talking about that. But yeah, just overall, just the sheer death toll. Again, it's just amazing how much. I mean, amazing in a bad way. You know, not like, oh, that's awesome, I just love the way so many people die. No, just like, it's awesome, and like, it leaves me in awe, but obviously it goes to show you just how war has, you know, evolved, and just so much happened, man. In this one war, it really just changed everything, you know? And I'm looking forward to the next video, which, you know, I'll be jumping to very soon, and I'll be seeing you all in the following week. So until then, bye everyone.